Hey guys, this week's tip comes to us by request, and it's been one of those items that's been requested for some time, so I guess it's time I got around to it. We're going to take a look at the fast food plugin in SMS that allows us to use modifiers in prepared food offerings. What we're going to do is we're going to review a couple of options with some examples that you can use within your store, to make sandwiches or to make meal bundles, things like that. And then we'll review the basic setup procedures of how to get all this stuff set up within SMS Pro so that it works exactly like what you want. So without further ado, let's hop in. Okay, so we're going to start this off with a demonstration of a couple different types or methods or examples and ways in which you can use the modifiers within SMS. The first is a typical submarine sandwich style restaurant where you're building the sandwich with all kinds of goodies on it. So I'm going to go into my Subway menu and you're going to see it pops up here the various items that are included within that grouping. Now all the sandwich offerings that you see on your screen here are items that are set up in SMS, and we'll get to that in a second. I'll show you how to set all that stuff up. This is the out of the box option for SMS modifiers, and what it is just a static web page that you use to pull in pictures and then the examples and descriptions of the various items for the grouping, whether it's sandwiches or chicken bucket or whatever the heck this thing is. Now this is the out of the box offering with the plugin that you can get. There is a drawback though, in my opinion, in that it is a static web page. So in this example here, if your submarine sandwich menu changes a lot, you're going to have to place a call or have a guy on staff that's good at HTML that can add those items in. You add them in manually into this HTML file. When we hop over to the other example, I'll show you a different way or a different method that allows you to have a more dynamic menu, which makes it a little bit easier in my opinion. All right, so enough of that. Let's step through. I'm in the mood for footlong chicken sub. I'm going to click that, and you'll see that another window pops up here. And it's pretty obvious what's going to happen. If you've ever been to a sub shop, these are the types of questions that the person behind the counter is going to ask the guest. What type of bread do you want, sir? Well, I want whole wheat bread. Okay, that's perfect. What type of cheese do you want, sir? I want cheddar cheese. Okay, that's perfect. Do you want anything else? Extra cheese. And you notice here I can charge for it. In the background here, you can see my sub is $7.99 for the footlong. And like most submarine or sandwich shops, most of this stuff is going to come with it, but you can get some extra items. And if you want to charge for those, you can certainly do it. So yeah, I want extra cheddar. And notice here, I'll move this over to the side. Notice here that our cheddar amount is going to be added, and that's also going to be added to the total balance due. Do you want bacon, Mr. Customer? No, no bacon today. Now we get to an option here that allows the customer to pick multiple items. Those previous screens that we were on, we can only pick one or the other. You couldn't pick both because you can't have whole wheat and white bread on the same bun because it'll make too much waste for the store there. So those offerings were one or the other. In this selection and in this menu here, you can choose multiple options. So let's step through it. So Mr. Customer, what all do you want on your sandwich today? Well, let me see. I want some mayo, give me some spicy mustard, throw some lettuce on there, some tomato and onion. Perfect. That's exactly what I want for lunch. Now you can see over here in the SMS POS screen that we're building out the order exactly how the customer wanted it. They got all this stuff up here that was a yes or a no, and then they got all the items or the condiments that could be who knows what depending on who the customer is. So that's kind of how we set this thing up. Now real quick, a couple other things. Let's say the customer says, heck, I screwed that up. I don't want whole wheat bread. So go back to the whole wheat bread menu here by just clicking on the button, the menu trail right up here at the top, and let's say they change it to regular bread. Okay, perfect. Now you got regular bread, and do you want to change the cheese? You can do that. Do you want to add extra cheese? Yes or no? You can make that change. Do you want bacon? No. And by the way, on my toppings, I want to go ahead and add green peppers. So you can add that. And you can see all of that is flowing through. So that's pretty cool. It's a step-by-step procedure of how to build the sandwich out based on what the customer wants. So one last thing here, you see this little note button right up here in the top of the screen. If we go ahead and hit that, that allows the cashier or the operator here to go ahead and type in a specific note that's about this particular order. So let's say in this case, the customer wants light mayo. So we just type in light mayo and we can go ahead and add that. So the customer has mayo on the order, but they just want a little bitty dab. They don't want a whole bunch. So this allows you to do that. Now, once you're done building out the order for the customer, all you simply have to do is hit the close button and you can see everything is built out here, including the note that the operator added. You can see that the general price of the sub is $7.99, the 99 cents for the extra cheese is there, and that's showing up in our balance due as well. Then we're just going to tender this puppy out, we're just going to cash it out, and you'll see a couple things here. Now on the receipt, now this could be a receipt sheet that you give the customer to maybe come back and pick it up at a later time. On that receipt, it has all the items that they want in their particular sandwich plus the note. At the same time, you could also print this exact same order with all the ingredients here on a kitchen printer, so whoever is making the sub for the customer can go ahead and do that via the kitchen printing tool. Now, let's look at one other option to this to show you a couple other variations of how you can use this modifier tool. Okay, so another example or typical use for the SMS modifiers functionality is the traditional value meal that most of you have probably bought at some time during your career at lunchtime. You know, you go buy the sandwich, you get the french fries, let's say, and a soda, and it all comes in a bundled price. So that's another typical use, and I want to simulate that by going into a chicken style restaurant where you're buying either a breakfast bucket or maybe a lunch bucket or a dinner bucket, you know, two-piece dinner, three-piece dinner, that type of thing. Now notice what happened in this case and in this example. Instead of going to a static HTML page where we showed pictures and the items that were in that grouping, I came to another button page. Now I don't have all the pretty pictures here, but what's cool about this scenario in my opinion is that we're still pulling the item descriptions directly from SMS Pro for the items that we set up. But this page is very, very dynamic. And by that I mean if we were to go add an item to this category here, and I'm going to show you that here in just a second, just for some giggles, if we add an item to this category, you're going to see a button pop up here automatically, and you don't do anything else. So I'm going to go back to the main menu so we can come back here. Now I'm going to hop back here to Pro, and I'm going to show you a little bit of magic because this part I think is pretty cool. All right, so this is the SMS Pro screen. You guys have seen this a gazillion times. We'll get back to explaining some of these fields here in just a second and go through the setup. I want to show you something that's kind of interesting and kind of neat on this button page though. So all I did is I pulled up all my chicken stuff here. You can see the dinners, the breakfast stuff, all that sort of stuff. Now I'm going to simulate adding a new item. Let's say it's seasonal or just something that I'm bringing in for a couple, 3 weeks. All I'm going to do to make this quick is I'm going to copy everything from this 4-piece dinner item. I went ahead and placed my new item up here already off screen. I'm going to double tap enter. It's going to say, hey, do you want to copy? Yep, I want to copy. And I want to go ahead and make one slight change. I'm going to, instead of a 4-piece, I'm going to make this a 5-piece dinner. Double tap down here in the POS description and save. So now I've got this. Now here's the total sex appeal I think about using this button page. I'm going to come back to the POS. I have not stopped the screen. I'm going to go back into my chicken menu and look at that. The 5-piece dinner that we just added, this item right here, was automatically added in a button. Now you have the option to change the size and the color and all that nonsense, but notice what happened. I came back, I added something to that set of menus, I come back to the button page, and now it's here. Don't believe me? Let's come back to the main item. Let's go back into Pro, and I'm going to go ahead and delete this 5-piece dinner. Yep, let's delete that thing. It destroys everything. I come back to the POS. I go back to my chicken menu, and look at that. The button is now gone. To me, that's pretty cool, and it's an easier and more effective use of your time if you have menus that change quite a bit. So let's go ahead and finish out this example of a chicken bucket. We're going to order our 4-piece. It's going to be what you expect. Pick your taters. I want mashed taters. Pick whatever your other side is, mac and cheese. Now pick your drink. This is just like the other sandwich example, except notice this time I don't have options. I can't pick multiple items, or there aren't any toppings or condiments that go on this. It's one or the other. I pick my Coke, and you'll see that price is going to get added to the bundle too if you want to do that. You also have the option to add in a note, and you can go back and forth if the customer changes his or her mind to pick. But again, this is a static menu. It's you pick one item from each group to build your value meal. The typical stuff that you see in fast food joints all the time. Now, let's hop over into Pro, and I'll show you how to set all this stuff up. So this is the typical SMS Pro screen that you've seen a gazillion times on these videos with all the item level information. The only difference is we've added the modifier table right over here to the right. And to get that, I went up to the item menu and just simply selected modifier down from the list. Now I'm going to go ahead and expand this out so we can get a nice big view of this now that we don't need the menus. So stepping through this is really no different in terms of setting up items as to what you're normally used to. We're going to have a couple tweaks in it, but that's really about it. I've grouped all my options into categories, and you can see I've selected a category here, and we've selected the footlong subs. I could also do the 6-inch subs if I wanted, and my chicken stuff, the Bojangles stuff, is right down here at the bottom. We're going to start off with the 12-inch subs, the footlong subs, and you can see they're just items. Give them the item number that you want, give them the description that you want, assign them to the departments that you want, and assign the price based off whatever metric that you want. That part of it is pretty simple and pretty standard. Now there are a couple other elements that we're going to add at the item level for those main items that you're going to be building out, whether it be the sandwiches or the chicken buckets in our examples. Your reseller is going to help you with these, so if you're a retailer watching this video, you probably aren't going to have to mess with this stuff. But if you want to print out to a kitchen printer the menu or the listing of items that the customer wanted, the lettuce, the mayo, all that sort of stuff, In the POS table, for each one of the items that you set up in the main part of the menu, you're going to have to identify a ticket printer. And you just simply come down here to the POS table, you double tap in here, and your reseller is going to set these up for you. Traditionally, they're going to be like ticket printer 1, kitchen printer 1, whatever it is, and those will be set up by the reseller. That says, in this scenario at least, that we're going to print a receipt for the customer for the 12-inch chicken sub, and we're also going to shoot whatever the heck the customer ordered, the menu of items that they ordered, off to this named kitchen printer so that the cook can make the sub. Now, the other element that will be added that your reseller is going to take care of for you is right down here in the URL field. And basically all this is doing is it's calling the script for the fast food plugin that pops up those web pages that we saw. You know, where you pick the tomato or the taters or whatever the heck it was, the modifiers of the main menu item. Now, one thing I forgot to mention and did not mention back on our demonstration that is somewhat relevant. Let's go back here. The actual modifier web pages that you pull up, you know, where you're choosing the bread or we go in and we choose the cheese, that sort of thing. These pages are exactly the same as that chicken bucket dynamic button page I showed you. These are dynamic too. So that if I add a new cheese, you know, Munster or some other cheese like that that you may want to add to the sandwich just for a certain period of time, if you add that item to this category that I'm going to show you how to do in just a second, that button will show up here automatically. Now, the reseller will help you with sizing and pictures and all that nonsense here, so don't worry about that. Just know that the actual modifier web pages are dynamic, just like that chicken bucket example that I showed you where we could turn the button on and off by simply adding an item into the category. So let's hop back over into Pro and go through the rest of this setup for our 12-inch chicken sub. Alright, so let's go through this modifier table here because it's really where all the magic happens for our subs or our chicken buckets or our value meals, whatever you want to call it. You're going to set up the main item just like you do everything else. We've already kind of been through that. So this is going to be your submarine sandwich, it's going to be your chicken bucket, it's going to be your hamburger value meal if that's what you do. The rest of the magic happens in this modifier table. And you can see here, I'm taking you through the steps. We had 5 steps on the POS when we were asking the customer what it is that they wanted. The bread, the cheese, extra cheese, bacon, any of that sort of thing, and then all the condiments on it. So each one of those steps is filled out for each one of the items in the main menu, whether that be your submarine sandwich or whether that be your chicken bucket. Now let's go through each of these fields because it's going to make a little bit more sense as we step through them one by one. All right, so this first section here, that sequence number, that's just the order in which the screens will show up. And if you remember back to our submarine sandwich demonstration, we did bread, cheese, and all that sort of stuff right down the line. So that's pretty easy. The descriptor here is the same exact descriptor that shows up when you pop up those screens for the bread, the cheese, and whatever. And it's also going to be used as the category description where we have the different items that make up the bread items themselves. This section right over here about whether or not each one of these elements are required. This is kind of important. If we double tap here, you'll see that we got some options here. So we got a compulsory option and an extra option. Compulsory just simply means yes or no. So on the bread, if you remember back to it, it's yes or no. Do you want white or wheat? You can't have both. You can't have half of one and half of the other. At least with the sub bun, you can't. Now the cheese, same thing. It's you pick one. What type of cheese do you want? So it's either a yes or no. You can see down here in the bottom, the general toppings. If we double tap that and bring that menu back up, you can see we have the menu title is called extra. And what that allows us to do is that you can pick one, multiple, or none. So the difference between compulsory and extra within this field right here, that's describing the types of categories that your customers can build out. Compulsory means you have to pick one or the other, or one of multiple, of course, but only one. Extra means you can have however many the heck that the customer wants, or you can have none. So the C, the compulsory, means you've got to pick at least one and only one, and the X means you can pick multiple or none. Then this section here, this field over here, type, all it is the grouping for the various items. So you can see I group mine by category. You could also group by family code if you're more familiar with that, report code, subdepartment, or department. Now, this is going to be one of those discussions you're going to want to have with your reseller about how to group these items or how to group these various categories together, because it could affect other elements down the road or even current elements within the system. So be sure to have that discussion with your reseller about the best way to set up the system initially. The final element of data here in the modifier table, referred to as the link, is just the unique identifier for the type of grouping that we have set up. So we remember set up all these items in the bread section as a category, category that we use in the main item grouping, and the grouping or the category number is 500014. You can see all these numbers here are just going to be elements that are set up in the system as categories. If you used subdepartment or report code or any of these other types of groupings, you would just simply use those identifiers over here. So to demonstrate that, I'm just going to use my filter to search by category, and I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these last two digits, and I'm going to type in 14. Now what should happen when I hit double enter is that it's going to bring up all the items associated with the bread category. And when I hit double enter, that's exactly what happens. Remember when we did the submarine sandwich demonstration? We had the 4 types of bread that showed up there. And the reason they showed up is because we associated the items that we created in an SMS with that particular category that we called bread, and we associated that category with that particular group of modifiers for a submarine sandwich. That's really all it is to it. You start off with a main menu item, then you group in all the elements or ingredients that make up that item. In the sandwich, it's the bread, the cheese, the condiments, that sort of a thing. So each one of those, the bread, the cheese, the condiments, that sort of thing, has its own set of categories here. And each category has its own item. Now the rest is going to be up to you and how you run the store, whether or not you associate prices with these items or you just roll everything up into a main price. You can do it either way. But again, it's just items that are set up, grouped in a category in this example. That category then is linked to the recipe that we're making for that particular submarine sandwich or chicken bucket or whatever it may be. Just to expand on that real quick, let's go back to our main menu of items, our footlong subs. I'm going to go back in and put in the O2 category, double tap enter, bring back our subs again. Now we can come down here to the extra bacon category if that's what we want to look at. Our category number is right here. It's 500010. So if we come back up to our filter here and we go ahead and get rid of that O2 and type in 10 and I double tap enter, I'm going to get those options that you saw in that menu pop up for asking about bacon. So this is where the operator said, Mr. Customer, do you want bacon? Yes, no, whatever it is. You can see those are set up here and just grouped within the category that I called no extra bacon. Now, what you'll see here is on the item level within the groupings, there isn't a modifier table entry. And the reason is because these are the modifiers. The modifier table is associated with the main menu item. So the submarine sandwich, the chicken bucket, the burger value meal, whatever it is. So no modifiers on the actual ingredients or the actual items that make up the modification of the main item. Pretty self-explanatory. So let's go ahead and hop over to our other category here for the chicken buckets, and I'll show you a couple things there. So if we take a look at the chicken meal example, you see all I did was pull up the category here associated with my chicken meals, and you have the main menu items listed here, our various piece dinners down here, and then the breakfast stuff. If we go back to the POS, I just want to show you these are the main items. So when we hit the chicken meal bundle, those items, the main items, are the ones that show up here on the buttons. So that's really all this is. Create the main menu item here, then use the modifier table to attach or link to existing items in the database that fall into, in this case, the category of potatoes, fixins, and drinks. Everything else between this and the sandwich version are the exact same. You'll notice in this scenario that my modifiers are only broken into 3 groups. Here are the categories because I'm using categories as the grouping agent, and you'll also notice that each one of the 3 groups here is what we call compulsory in SMS, meaning you pick one or the other, or one from many of groups, but only one, and you have to pick it. So back on the POS screen, just to give you an idea, when we go into the fixin section, I have to at least pick one of these items. These 4 items here tie back into the category. If I were to just change over real quick to that category, here's the fixins category. Those 4 items tie to these 4 items in the menu. Pretty simple, pretty cool. So that's a pretty good review of the functionality and the basic setup of the modifiers functionality within SMS. I suspect though that this particular video is going to cause a lot more questions to come about, and that's fine. Just shoot them in and we can get them answered. You know, some of the questions I suspect will be all over the place, but some basic ones are going to be like in this example here on the screen. The customer's already ordered their 3-piece dinner and now they want to order an extra side, let's say. How do we go about doing that? The easy answer to that is, well, there's several ways, really a bunch of different ways. If you know the PLU number of the item, you can type that in and just hit the PLU key, and that's going to bring up the coleslaw in this case. You know, another example, you could utilize flip charts going into the categories section, and you're going to have normal fixins, you know, those items that aren't being charged for that are part of the bundle. Then you're going to have fixins a la carte as a separate category. Same type of thing where it's going to allow us to charge for that extra coleslaw or that a la carte section of coleslaw. So a bunch of options there for you. You could have other menu pages. So Definitely send the questions in. We can get them answered, and certainly ask your reseller because there are a ton of ways and methodologies that could be used in this type of setup and this type of functionality. With both objectives met, that's it for this week's tip. Hopefully, we've given you a couple ideas about how you can put typical food service technology to work in your own store yet today. Until next time, have a great day.